Science of Boxing and our guest Nigel Collins. Nigel is with ESPN, very intelligent boxing guy. Nigel Collins joining us right now, boxing expert. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, thanks.
Great to have you on, and let's get into it. I want to talk about Bernard Hopkins a little bit. Almost half a century old. What's up with this? Is he really an alien? What's going on with B-Hop?
Well, Bernard Hopkins is a unique fighter. I've known him since his early days when he was fighting at the Blue Horizon in Philadelphia and covered most of his major fights. He's a zealot when it comes to conditioning. He's probably got the highest boxing IQ of any fighter I've ever known. And he just keeps doing things that amaze people. How he does it, he's been able to adapt his style. Now, first of all, he's a guy that knows every nuance, every trick in the book in boxing. For many years, we ran a article in Ring Magazine, which was an instruction column, and it was called Perfect Execution, and he was the fighter that gave the lessons. And I learned an awful lot during that time. He can just glide through every move. Everything he does is very calculated. Now, when he was a young man, he was a seek-and-destroy fighter, had a lot of knockouts. But as he aged, he realized his body couldn't do the things it used to do, and he developed a system of taking away what his opponent does best. That's basically Bernard's fight plan, in his older age, to take away what the other fighter does best. Now, of course, he's going up against Sergey Kovalev in November the 8th in Atlantic City, who is definitely the most dangerous opponent he's fought in a long time. This guy's a real monster. He is a knockout puncher. He's extremely aggressive. He's extremely strong. So, could this be the end of Bernard Hopkins' incredible run? Maybe, maybe not. But if he can take away what Kovalev does best, which is knock you out with big roundhouse punches, if anybody can do it and shut down this guy, it would be Bernard. So every time he fights now, he sets a new record. He's the oldest man to ever win a major title, the oldest man to ever defend a major title. And, his last couple of opponents haven't been, the greatest. But this is going to be a real acid test for Bernard.
Yeah, and he's a Philly guy, and you're a Philly guy, so you did have a chance to see him. Now, you said he's the smartest in the ring. Is that because you've been around him and seen him? You comparing him all the time as smartest that you've seen, or just right now?
Well, I would say he has the highest boxing IQ of any fighter I've covered, and I've been in the business for over 40 years. And what he's done is he's learned his trade. Take, for instance, Roy Jones, who was a rival of Bernard's for many, many years. For many years that Roy Jones was considered the greatest fighter pound for pound around. But Roy Jones, he achieved his success because he had unworldly reflexes and speed. But he never learned his craft. So when he lost a little bit, slowed down a step, wasn't quite as fast, he started getting knocked out. And, unfortunately at this point he's still fighting because he needs the money, but he's nowhere near the fighter he used to be because he depended on his physical attributes. Bernard depends on his boxing knowledge and what he has learned through more than 20 years of fighting. And he can evaluate an opponent. He knows what an opponent is. So if the opponent's best thing is a jab, he'll take his jab away. If his opponent is the kind of guy who rushes in, throwing knockout punches, he'll do that. He'll try to take that away. A lot of people think that, some of Bernard's fights are boring. He'll clinch and he'll hold the guy, but beating him has been one of the toughest puzzles for opponents in the history of boxing.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. And the Roy Jones things, I agree with you, too. He was so quick at his time. With B-Hop, I don't think he's ever been knocked out. He has a hard head. Has he been knocked out? I'm trying to remember.
No, he's never been stopped. And even more important than that, is he's never taken a severe beating. If you, for instance, get knocked out in the first round, that's not particularly damaging. The fights that really damage fighters are the long, grueling fights, where you take a lot of punishment. But Bernard Hopkins has been beaten, but he has never taken a beating, never really been hammered.
One of the top fighters in the last 30 years. Talk about a couple of his fights. When he fought De La Hoya, did Oscar take a dive?
No. I was ringside for that fight. He delivered a left hook to the liver. Fortunately, I've never received a left hook to the liver, but what it does is it paralyzes you momentarily. You're conscious, you want to get up, but your body just won't respond.
Right, no, I understand, but I'm not saying that punch won't do that, but it didn't seem like he landed at that side. It didn't seem like Oscar was hurt at the time.
Well, he was rolling around on the floor in agony, so he was obviously hurt. Could he have faked it? Yeah, anybody could have faked it, but I don't believe that's what happened. If you take a look at the video closely, you'll see that Bernard sort of has him on the ropes, and he kind of holds him there with his right shoulder. He peers over the shoulder of Oscar, and he plants that left exactly in the place where it really hurts. And you see a lot of guys get knocked out by a body shot. There's often sometimes a couple of seconds delay, and then they're grimace and fall over. People are sometimes, because it's boxing, are very suspicious, and there's a lot of bad things that go on in boxing. But in my personal opinion, having seen a lot of fights over the years and being ringside for that fight, he knocked him out with a shot to the liver.
He probably did. That was his first fight with Golden Boy, and it was just a rare thing. I think he would have won that fight anyways. Speaking on Golden Boy, now you got Canelo moving over to HBO. I haven't been too impressed with him as a fighter. I think he fought 90-year-old Sugar Shane, and he didn't look very good against Floyd. How do you feel about him and his contract moving over to HBO?
Well, the thing is about Canelo that's important is that he has a huge following. So from a business point of view, he's a very important fighter. As far as pay-per-view goes, after Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, he's number 3 as far as drawing pay-per-view audience. The biggest demographic for boxing in this country is the Latino demographic. So it's not just the Mexican Americans in California, it's the Mexicans in Mexico. So this is an important thing for Oscar De La Hoya. As you know, Oscar De La Hoya had a lot of personal problems and was sort of in la-la land for a long time. And whilst that was happening, his chief operating officer, Richard Schaefer, sort of took over the company. And when Oscar came out of rehab the last time and looked around and saw what was going on, he fired Richard Schaefer. So Richard Schaefer and Al Heyman, who is an advisor to many good fighters, including Floyd Mayweather, are on one side of an argument, and they're with Showtime. Bob Arum and Top Rank was always on the other side. And it was a little bit lopsided. Heyman had he had the number 1 fighter in Mayweather, and he had a lot of other good fighters that he was signing up. But now that Oscar De La Hoya and Bob Arum are getting together again, they're going to form a formidable opponent for the Schaefer and Heyman partnership. So HBO versus Showtime, yes, but it's really Oscar De La Hoya and Bob Arum versus Al Heyman and Richard Schaefer.
It looks like Miguel Cotto will come in there maybe and fight Canelo. How do you feel about him as a fighter? I know he has the fan base.
I think that Miguel Cotto has been a great fighter for a long time for 2 reasons. One, he'll fight anybody. And when he does fight, he goes all out, win or lose. He's never pussyfoots around. He never half steps. He goes for it. Now, he is past his prime. There's no doubt about it. But he is the legitimate middleweight champion after beating Sergio Martinez. And the fight with Canelo would probably be bigger than any fight you could make other than, of course, the long muted fight between Pacquiao and Mayweather. That would be a huge draw at the box office. In fact, even though the record for pay-per-view buys goes to Oscar and Floyd Mayweather when they fought, when Canelo fought Mayweather, the actual amount of money that was generated was larger. So Canelo against Miguel Cotto would be a huge financial boom for boxing and the promoter. And also, it would be a good fight. Now, I think you're right. Canelo's not a great fighter, but he's young, he's strong, he comes to fight. And as Miguel Cotto is sliding, that will make it an even fight. And even fights are the ones that we really want to see.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right with that. And I think you're right. That'll be a major draw with those things happening. But you mentioned there, you said Mayweather, Pac-Man. Is that going to happen?
I don't think so. It's been talked about for so many years. Frankly, it's boring. It's ridiculous. It's
You're
like
right.
here we go again. I think even now, I think that it would be a great fight. A lot of people think that Mayweather's got it all over him, but I don't know if you saw Mayweather's second fight with Maidana or the first one. He didn't look like the greatest fighter in the world. So I think they've both aged. I think, it would have been a great fight when they were both in their prime and a toss-up. And, I think Mayweather's lost a little bit. Pacquiao hasn't quite lost as much in the way of speed, but he's not knocking people out as often now. So I think it would still be a great fight and still be a toss-up fight. But I don't think it'll ever happen. I can't really speak for anybody. Of course, the promoters have a lot to do with it. It sort of seems that, Pacquiao is much more willing than Mayweather, but, there's going to be a counter to that from Mayweather's fans, the same old stuff we've been hearing for years and years and years. I think what people have to realize that they're both great fighters. Just because you're a Mayweather fan doesn't mean that Pacquiao stinks, and if you're a Pacquiao fan, it doesn't mean that Mayweather's terrible. I think there's a polarized situation where people are so blinded by their support for one or the other, they can't see the simple truth. They're both great fighters. Whether they'll ever fight each other, I doubt it.
And it is kind of getting an old question I have to agree with. At this point, it's kind of like, why don't they just go in there and do it? And you said Mayweather didn't look good against Maidana, and Father Time is undefeated just like he is. So I think that is what it is. I don't think Maidana wasn't the right opponent to go in there and capitalize on it. Mayweather looked a step slower. He's getting older. So who do you think Mayweather's going to – he says he has 2 fights left.
Yeah, I don't really know what he's going to do. I mean
well, who would you like to see him go up against?
Well, he may fight Amir Khan from England. Now, if they took the fight to England, that would be huge. They had a fight between Carl Froch and George Groves over there this year that drew 80,000 people to Wembley. They could probably do that again. But Mayweather doesn't like to go out of the country to fight. He's the sort of guy that wants everything his own way. So I think if he did fight Amir Khan, Khan would come over here. Cotto gave him a pretty tough fight. He didn't win, but there were some rounds that certainly that Cotto won. He could have a rematch with Cotto. Both Pacquiao and Mayweather are sort of running out of viable opponents. And in a more saner situation, they would fight each other. They would have fought each other before. Maybe they'd had a trilogy like Ali and Frazier. It could, but business is what it is. Boxing it is what it is right now. It's not a good situation, especially from the fans. But I don't really know what Mayweather's going to do next. I don't think he really knows either at this point.
Yeah, you're probably right. But I don't want to see him do a Canelo and Maidana. I don't want to see him do somebody that he can just go in there and win easily. He has to be challenged. I don't know about Khan. He did get knocked out. He is a boxer, though, but I don't know if he has the speed to keep up with him. Maybe at 37 he could keep up with Mayweather now.
Well, you got to remember this. Yes, Marquez knocked him out cold. There's no two ways about that. But you also have to remember that it looked like Pacquiao was going to knock him out right when he got nailed. And he's come back and done very well. He was robbed in the first fight with Bradley, beat him easily the second fight. He beat Rios. What he's done, we were talking about Bernard Hopkins a little while ago. Pacquiao is adapting his style to getting older. He's not taking quite as many risks anymore, but he's still got that speed. He's still got that ability to duck and move and come in and then move away. So rather than going all out for the knockout anymore, which of course Mayweather hasn't done in years either. So good fighters who last into later age, they're the fighters who, like Bernard Hopkins and like Mayweather and like Pacquiao, that adapt their style to fit their age.
I just don't know if Khan can do it. Danny Garcia beat him. I don't know. We'll see. But jumping away from that for a minute, let's talk about Terrance Crawford. Because I like what he's doing. I like him in his last fight.
Terrance Crawford, yeah. Well, he's like a bright new light in the lightweight division. He looks very good in his last fight. He's exciting. He's a combination of boxing and punching. He's fighting Beltran, the Mexican who used to be a sparring partner for Pacquiao, who was robbed over in Scotland when he fought Ronnie Burns. But he's a tough guy. You know, he's a good pro. He can punch. I think Crawford is going to beat him, but it's not one of those gimme fights, you know, an easy fight like that. It's going to be a good fight. I think that Crawford is potentially a superstar. We just have to wait and see. Also, you know, unfortunately in boxing, being an excellent fighter isn't always what makes you a superstar. You know, personality has a lot to do with it. Mayweather was always a great fighter, but until he, sort of invented this Money Mayweather persona, he wasn't doing that well at the gate. He was earning nice money and all, but he wasn't the biggest attraction in boxing. So he invented a persona which is probably an exaggeration of the way he really is, and that turned everything around for him. So, you know, Crawford, I think he's most likely has the athletic ability to be a really, really good fighter. Whether he can attract the fans and cross over, we have to see. I think it's going to take a series of good fights at the very least. You know, for a lot of people that aren't necessarily boxing fans to sit up and take notice. But I agree with you. He's one to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah, I really like Terrance Crawford, and he can go either hand. He can go southpaw. Now you said Money Mayweather has the character and the image. Looking at that, and you have Adrian Broner who does, you know, just kind of steals that idea. Crawford isn't the flashy guy, and I think the fans need that. I think the fans are looking for somebody that's not an Adrian Broner, Money Mayweather type of guy. I think they want somebody to tone it back a little bit.
You know, that's definitely true. I mean, different fighters appeal to different audiences. You know, Sonny Liston said that, you know, there's always a good guy and a bad guy in fights. And he was always the bad guy, the guy that wore the black hat, you know, referring back to the old cowboy movies. I think there is an appreciation for a guy like Crawford, and there is an audience waiting for him, and boxing fans are excited about him. But what we have to realize is, in order to cross over into a huge pay-per-view star who could attract 1 million people, you have to also appeal to the casual fan who watches maybe 1 or 2 fights a year. So, you know, that will remain to be seen. Now, there have been fighters in the past that weren't particularly flashy, like take Marvin Hagler. He was a very blue-collar kind of guy, but he became a huge star. So it can happen. Now, we talked a lot about Pacquiao. Pacquiao has personality that's the total opposite to Mayweather. And I think that's the reason that the fan base is so divided between them. You know, there's people that like the grinning, happy, humble guy like Pacquiao, and there's a huge audience for the guy who's ostentatious and, brags a lot. So, you know, there's always a good guy and a bad guy, and that helps sell tickets.
And Ali had his hand in some of that stuff, too, with the...
Sure.
So what about Adrian Broner knocking out Emmanuel Taylor a month ago, 20 seconds to go in the fight. Is Broner is he all just talk and image, or is he going to turn out to be something here?
Well, I think Marcos Maidana answered that question. He is a Mayweather wannabe and tried to patent himself after Mayweather in an even more outrageous manner, and he has athletic skills. But I don't think we're ever going to see him in the Hall of Fame.
Speaking of Broner and guys like that, do you think America needs to get a heavyweight champion to get America back involved? I know in the heavyweight.
Well, I think for decades, the heavyweight champion of the world was an American. And there are some people that only like to follow the heavyweights. But throughout the history of boxing, it's really been smaller guys. Remember when Muhammad Ali retired and said that boxing was going to die? Well, it didn't. Sugar Ray Leonard came along, and a welterweight who became a huge star. And I think it would be great if America had a really good heavyweight and he became champion. Now, whether it's going to happen or not, I don't know. But boxing doesn't need that to survive. The largest amounts of money that have ever been generated have been generated by smaller fighters. We've talked about them: Oscar De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, Sugar Ray Leonard, Manny Pacquiao. So you don't really need, but it really would be good if we could have another good American heavyweight.
And Sugar Ray did become a star. He was at crossover appeal, but he had some. How good was the lower classes in with Hearns and Hagler and everybody, the Four Kings? I mean, it was just a great time. And nobody was really ducking anybody. It was, a little bit. Hagler and Sugar Man played some games, but you didn't see it like you have going on. What would be the ideal matchup right now that you would like to see happen?
In any division?
Any division?
Well, yeah, I'd like to see a guy like Evgeny Golovkin fight Floyd Mayweather. Something like that. I think that would be intriguing. I don't think Floyd Mayweather would ever take it, but he's the sort of guy who can box and punch, really hard. Everybody he's fought, he just totally destroyed them. Has he fought the very best guys? Not yet, but I think that would be a great matchup.
Okay. Well, Nigel Collins, thank you for joining Through the Wire. I would definitely look forward to having you on again.
All right, listen, it's always great to talk boxing, Catfish. Take care.
You too.
All right, Nigel Collins right there, and that is it for our show this week. Join us next Friday, Through the Wire Sports Talk Radio. I'm your host, Catfish Hughes. Last one out, get the lights.
Through the Wire.